Mighty Fuzz podcast, episode 4 with my brother, Leeroy Press. Leeroy Press is a well-known independent journalist in New York City, covering wide range of activism, everything from BLM to the freedom movement, the migrants, the vegan movement, everything. Crime, cops, politicians. This man does it all. Thank you for joining me, Leroy.
Thanks for having me on, Greg.
Let's get right into it. Starting with BLM. You covered BLM in 2020. You got to see in New York City what was happening. Obviously, in every state, different things happen. But what did you witness filming and doing journalism following BLM?
Well, the reason why I wanted to go to BLM is I want to see what the truth was, right? What is the truth? Because the mainstream will twist the truth, right? And sometimes when people heard BLM, that they just thought about riots and insanity and stuff like that, which wasn't really the case. So I really wanted to see what was what. And I went there and I seen, like I said, it wasn't always violent. There wasn't always riots happening. There were some times where it was just chanting and people getting along and trying to find solution and asking for justice for certain things that happen in the world, right? And I noticed that, and sometimes the mainstream news, like I said, they wanted to focus only on the violence, and that wasn't the case, right? That wasn't the truth. Because I went to multiple BLM protests where they were very peaceful, very loving. You know, they just have their own activism involved, right? And a lot of their stuff is like social justice, opening up borders, opening up jails, housing for all, and that's their activism. That's their part of the thing. And like I said, there was a lot of parts where it was very calm and very peaceful and very sweet, and you know, nothing really happened. And I wanted to know what was the difference between reality and what the mainstream news does, you know. And that's why I started going there and started trying to see what's what.
So like all activism and what the media is pushing, there's obviously propaganda happening, and there's obviously a direct division that's happening on that TV. So you being there, you're saying that it was mostly peaceful?
Some of them was peaceful, but don't get me wrong, there was violence. There was some violence. There was some riots that happened. Absolutely, they were there. But sometimes out of, say, 5,000 people, there'll be one incident at some of these protests, and the news will just focus on that one person or that one incident, but won't focus on anything else, right?
Were there other groups that were meshing with the main peaceful protesters that were starting any violence or agitation? Did you see any of that, where there were certain people that were purposely turning it into violence?
Absolutely. There was tons of outside aggravators that will come to these BLM protests that intentionally incite riots, right? They would come there, they had a motive to set the cops up, right? Let's go to the BLM riot. Let's start yelling at the cops. Let's start throwing stuff at the cops, and let the cops react. And we'll film it, right? And they'll film it, or their press will film it, and they'll cut out the part where someone attacked the cop, right? And they made it look like, all right, the cops are the bad guy, going against the police manual. Cops who are intentionally screwing people over. Cops, corrupt cops, do not belong having a badge on them. They do not belong having that blue uniform on them, right? I can agree with them with that, right? And even cops could agree that cops who are dirty should not have that blue uniform, right? And it's not all of the cops. Like, you have a very small percentage. And again, like we're talking about, focus on a small percentage than the big percentage, right? And at that time, we were just focusing on, that the news was just focusing on one bad cop out of 50,000 bad cops, right? And they made it look like the whole police force is bad, which is not it's not the case.
I feel like the media tried to scare the black community that cops were targeting them. Did you get that vibe as well? Like the media was painting it like the cops were getting into their cars and attacking the black community. Was that message coming out of the media?
During that time, yes, that was the message. That was, black people are being targeted. And look, there is problems with the black community. There is problems, and the black community can say, yeah, there's problems here. We need to have it solved. But cops didn't intentionally go out there to start shooting people for no reason, right? We do have criminals in every community, not just the black community, right? The white, the black, the Asian, the Jewish, the Spanish. We have problem makers in every community, right? And sometimes, like I said, people will focus on that one incident, right, and make it look like the whole thing's going wrong. Look, people do fall victim to police brutality, and I'm a witness to it. Sometimes cops would mistake someone, or they would search someone, right, for no reason, right? And that I'd be mad about that if I'm walking down the street, if someone throws me up against a car.
Leeroy, man, we grew up, you're a little older than me, but we grew up in the 90s. I mean, we remember the quotas. I mean, I'm sure you were put on the wall. I was put on the wall to think that cops had to hunt for crime, not like someone called, but hunt for crime and quotas. That was a very real thing. The Fourth Amendment, you know, like think about the Fourth Amendment. When you do stop and frisk, you override that Fourth Amendment. Do you think the NYPD is not respecting we the people's Fourth Amendment?
Right now, they can actually search you down. Right now, there's something called an F-250 form, right? And that form, I believe, is they can just grab you and throw you up against the wall and search you. The way those forms happen is you have to be a suspected gang member, right, to get one of those forms. Like, say I'm a cop, I got this form. There's Greg. I know Greg is a convicted felon. I know Greg, whatever it is, right? Not saying to convict, but I know Greg is a criminal.
I am. Yeah.
You are. so
I'm a changed man. I found God.
You found God. Like all of us, right? They can have that form and legally, right now, throw you up against the wall and search you, right? And get away with it, right? Is it still happening without those forms? I'm pretty sure it is. Do I think it's right? Absolutely not. But do I think bad people need to be searched? Yeah. I think guys that are known criminals, right, that have been caught with guns multiple times, that are known to rob people, that are bad people, right, should be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right? They could rob me, they could rob you, they could rob my mother, right? And we do need these cops to fix it. Now, there has to be a way to do it, and I think the cops found a different way to do it with the F-250 form, where you're a suspected gang member, you're a drug dealer, right? You're a bad person. You're supposed to be uncomfortable. Supposed to be uncomfortable, right? We can't let these criminals run the streets and get away with everything. It should not happen to innocent people. That's the line, right? That's where we say, all right, if it's happening to someone that doesn't deserve it, there has to be some accountability held.
When it comes to the Constitution, guys, we have to be absolute. It has to be absolute. So where I agree that when there's bad people that have bad intent, that they shouldn't be comfortable in our community. And this is where I think the community could assist. I don't think the community should police totally, because the society's sick, guys. And we haven't fixed the society to even take that step. But where I get concerned is, what if now these forms that today work for gang members, could they be for someone that has a political view? Can the forms change at some point? If we allow it for this thing, could it later transition to something else? Maybe Leeroy Press is showing the cops in a bad light and they put the form on Leeroy Press. Those are my concerns when we start having these forms that make these gray areas to the Fourth Amendment. What's your take on that?
Anything is possible in the political world, bro. Anything is possible. I know to get that form, you have to be a suspected gang member, right? If they're putting people that don't do nothing with those forms, that's an issue. That's a lawsuit. And you have to prove on why they're on that paper. So if you search me right now, you have to show that form. Leeroy Press is this, and that. Prove it. Has Leeroy Press been arrested in the past 5 years? Has Leeroy Press been seen selling drugs? Has Leeroy Press been seen having a gun? Why is this form there? That's when I sue. That's when I'll sue. But yeah, it shouldn't be used for political weapons. And you know what? Like I said, anything's possible.
Yeah.
We live in a world
especially with everything that's going on right now.
Anything's possible. Anybody can be put on a form. Anybody can be put on a form. But if it does, just remember, there is legal action that'll be taken if it's done illegally.
So being myself, I'm not in the right wing or anything like that, but some of the concerns that I know that there are people that are Republicans that watch me, they would want to know more about the Marxist stuff, this Marxist push in that group. Did you see more people that just were against police brutality? Did you see Marxist propaganda or anything like that? Did you personally see any of that stuff?
Of course, I would see pamphlets, anarchy pamphlets, right? Against government pamphlets. Anarchy papers that leaflets that they were passed out on how to avoid cops, or how to attack cops and get away with it. During the beginning of the Black Lives Matter protest, you would have these certain anarchist groups that will pass out flyers that'll teach you propaganda, right? That'll teach you how to get away with committing crimes. That'll teach you how to attack cops. That'll tell you, don't bring your phone. Get a burner phone, right? Don't do this. Mask up. And they were teaching people how to become criminals.
Guerrilla warfare.
Guerrilla warfare, right? And that's Marxism.
Yeah.
That's anarchism. That's not even Marxism. That's anarchism.
Yeah, there's a misinterpretation of the anarchy word and the anarchism. Believe it or not, and I know why you call them that, because of the word anarchy. These groups, they always align with something that's going on with the Democratic Party or Biden. Not saying BLM so much, really, the anti-fascists, which we should all be against fascism, guys. We should all be against it, right? We should all be for that Black Lives Matter until Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, right? All that jargon. Freedom fighter. What are you against? Freedom. You see how these words are played a certain way, where if you're against it, then you're against freedom or you're against black people. But the word anarchy, ironically, with talking with people, we're in New York City, and I've spoken with many anti-fascists, and after talking to them, they're not really anarchists. They're just starting anarchy. And anarchists would not be for these agendas that are happening. They wouldn't be for masks or mandates or backing Biden or any of these things that they're almost coming out as counterpresses at this point and protecting the government, behaving like they're against government, but they're shielded by this political arena 100%. Even watching them counter, like, we finally have a time where the right wing is waking up to the bootlicking of government, right? Because everything's balanced, guys. With this government, obviously, they're encroaching on the people. So we have to fix it. One group is saying just start anarchy and we'll just have craziness and no police, no this, no that. That's not the answer. The other group is we have this right wing that everybody knows, especially in New York City. The right wing has been totally behind, big military, big police. And we finally have this awakening happening where they're finally waking up a little bit, and Antifa is counter-protesting it. If there was ever a time where we could agree, but they're choosing not to. And that's a red flag to me, Leroy.
So let me explain what's going on with these groups. These groups don't like any government. Some of these groups, they hate government. But if they can use one side against another, they'll say they're for that side just to use it against another group. And then once they take care of that group, they're going after the same group that backed them.
So it's just a stepping stone. Right.
Yeah, it's
cops protecting them in a moment.
Exactly.
But they hate cops.
That's the deal with these
Copy.
Like, you seen the video I posted the other day of a so-called anarchist who hates police and they're hiding behind cops. And that's what they do. They manipulate. They're very good at manipulating. They're smart.
So guerrilla warfare.
Guerrilla warfare.
We're at guerrilla warfare.
Absolutely.
Copy. So, all right. So we covered BLM. We covered Antifa. Now the freedom movement. What was the difference with watching the freedom movement? What is their message, and what was that like for you and the journalism?
Well, believe it or not, both of them at times agree on the same thing, which is they don't like governmental rules. They're anti-government groups, no matter which way you look at it, right? Each group is an anti-government. I don't like this part of the government. I don't like this part of the government. I want this change from the government. They kind of agree with the same stuff most of the time, believe it or not. They're just
a powerful point, Leroy. That's a powerful point.
There's just a little different similarities and stuff, right? The freedom group movement wants, like, I remember with the mandate, right? They didn't want the mandate, unjustified. People lost their jobs just to find out they didn't do what it was supposed to do, right? It doesn't stop the spread, right? And we knew it didn't stop the spread. That's 100% we knew from the beginning. And people lost their jobs. And the freedom movement, it's more constitutional to where in the Black Lives Matter movement, it's more social justice, which kind of falls in the same constitution, right?
Because they want freedom.
They want freedom.
Just a word.
Freedom from the government.
Right.
It's the same thing.
And now the right wing is finally waking up to limited government, because that's the thing, guys. And for people that lean right, that watch this, what you're awakening to has been happening. And I think Leroy would agree with this. The civil rights movement tried to tell us, Malcolm X tried to tell us, Martin Luther King tried to tell us that once you give government too much power, they will always overreach. That's a historical lesson, guys. And I believe we're in where people see differences. I see a common ground, and Leroy just said that common ground. It's just that we have to get the verbiage on the same page. Obviously, I mean, do you want communism?
I definitely don't want communism.
I don't want communism. So I guess a solution would be individual rights, limited government, where you and your household, if you want to be a comrade in your home, just don't tread on me. Just don't tread on me, and we won't tread on you. And I think that is the sweet spot. But then people will say that we have bad people that will do bad things, and this is the reasoning for this militarization of the police. I don't think there's no justification for where we are police-wise at this point. Do you see any justification for this militarization of police in New York City?
Look, I'm a crime reporter too, and I see things that most people don't see. The city is riddled with crime. Riddled with crime. The shootings went down, thank God. The murders went down, thank God. But everything else went up after COVID. The robberies, the petty larcenies, the stabbings, the rape, and stuff like that went up. Do I think there's too much money in the police force? Probably too much. Do I think it's right that an army of police show up to protest wearing riot gears and all kinds of machinery? No, I think it's over-exaggerated. Do I think cops should show up to a restaurant with someone trying to eat a milkshake with an army of cops? That's probably not probably
a little overreach.
A little overreach to tell people again. Yeah, a little bit. Again, we do need cops to fight crime.
Right.
Me and you,
we have bad people.
Look, we live in a sick world, right? And especially covering crime, you can see how sick this world is, right? Who's gonna go get these guys? Me or you? I'm getting too old. I'm not gonna go start fighting crime on the street. I got no time for this shit anyway.
Right.
You're not gonna do it. You know, most of our friends are not gonna do it, right? We need cops, but do we need them to be trained differently? Probably. Do we need certain machinery that they have? I don't know. There is crimes on the street that where where guys are barricading themselves in houses that have an arsenal of weapons in the house, and cops got to take care of it. They're not going to go there in one of those little mini cars they got now to take care of it, because that's not going to work. They need some kind of equipment to take care of that stuff. But again, every city, every state, the United States is a powerful country. You know why? Because they're defense. Right? Because people are scared. All right, these nut jobs got all these kind of weapons. We don't want to mess with them. Sometimes it's a deterrent for criminals too. When the cops say, "Well, I got all these weapons. These guys can send something through your door and blow your whole door up from their car."
I just look at it like the city, New York City, is looking more like a CCP styled situation when we have cameras on every corner and the meter maids and fines and all this stuff. How the city just makes money off victimless crimes and stuff, and we're all groomed to it, so we don't realize. But the more of the education I'm learning, man, like when you get back down to the Constitution and the Republic, which was founded, it never went away. It's not like it was, it's just dormant. And these politicians over years, brother, we gave them too much power. There was too much bread and circus, and now they're making money off we the people. They're surveilling we the people. How do we dial back this government overreach?
You can't.
You can't?
You can't.
Tell me why we can't.
I was told by a very, very
pack it up, guys. It's over.
An 80-year-old guy who's an activist, who's a very famous lawyer, and he told me those activists will never beat the government. The government's too strong. You might try to negotiate with them, but at the end of the day, if the government wants to do it, they're going to do it. And there's no stopping them. There's no stopping them.
Let's talk about the migrants. And I just want to start with, you're doing great work right now, man. New York City is totally flooded. And you are out there 5 nights, 7 nights a week for the last year, brother. What has that experience been like?
Look, I never seen anything like this in my life. I remember the first time I filmed migrants coming into New York City. is I got a phone call from my friends in Staten Island, and they said, Leroy, you got to come down there and see what's going on there. I said, what are you talking about? They said, it's looking like a Mexican border town, like Texas, El Paso. Like they're walking around with bags on their back, and it looks strange. I said, what are you talking about? This is Staten Island. Like, how could this even be possible?
Right.
I shoot into Staten Island, and I'm like, I get into Travis, Staten Island. And I'm like, what is this? What's going on here? Right? And what I discovered is migrants walking through the whole neighborhood. I believe the city bought 2 huge hotels, and they packed them with migrants, with thousands of migrants. And I'm like, what is this? Right? I was like, I never seen anything like this in my life. And that's how my first migrant experience started. And ever since then, I got interested in it and wondering, like, really, what is going on here, right? It was kept in the dark for such a long time, but it's happening, right? And after that, that started my experience. And I'm like the main migrant reporter in New York. I've been covering it, like, for the past year, and my sources are amazing. And I just started getting more and more in depth with it. And I wanted to know what was what. Look, I would find certain migrant facilities that the city tried to hide, right? And it was like a cat and mouse game with them. Like, I would kept finding different facilities. And they're like, how does this guy keep finding these places, right? And like I said,
They were doing it. They were hiding.
They were hiding it in the beginning.
So the government, the local government.
The city was hiding.
Right.
Or unless they just didn't leak it out and tell anybody about it.
Gotcha.
And I would constantly find these spots. I would show up, and they would be like, how the hell did this guy find the spot? You know? It's interesting to see what's going on. And look, it is being flooded right now. We have over 100 and something thousand migrants in New York.
100 and something
thousand
people that are coming into this city, and we don't have the resources to accommodate them. And I just want to start with this, guys. You know, this man has the biggest heart when it comes to this. He really feels for these families. We speak about this privately all the time, but these people are obviously being told to come here for something. So it's not them personally, and I just want to say that publicly. What is it like seeing these families and them coming here, and I see video of them being on the floor that you did. What is that like, seeing men, women, and children on the floor in
Look,
New York?
It's a horrible experience. I have to have a heart with this. You know, I'm a reporter, and sometimes your emotions get involved with it. And there is a lot of good families that came here, that families that actually need help, right? But then we have our freeloaders that are being told, come to New York. New York will give you anything you need: clothing, food, housing, and people are taking advantage of this, right? Look, Adams made a mistake, and he said, everyone's welcome. Come here, migrant crisis. But again, I don't hold it towards Adams either, because say you invite me over your house, and I said, look, I'm bringing a friend, and I show up with 100 friends, right? That's what I believe happened with Adams.
And didn't bring any beer.
And didn't bring any beer or weed. And I believe that's what happened, right? He was expecting, I don't know, 10,000, 20,000, and now we have 100,000. I'm personally in the mix with City Hall, with the streets, with everything.
Yeah.
They can't afford this. They're losing their mind. And I see it on their faces. And people off the record, city officials, are telling me, look, we don't want this here, both on the left and the right. They said, this is not something we signed up for, right? They want to help people. And it's a noble deed to help people from other countries that need real political asylum, where their families have gotten butchered, where their kids have gotten butchered, right? They need help, absolutely. But then again, we have these people that are taking advantage of our kindness. These guys are being told, go to New York, they'll take care of you, they'll give you everything you need, and they have to by law.
Emerald City.
Emerald City, yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Adams is actually sending out flyers to the border saying, don't come here, stop coming here.
Right.
Right?
To the city itself. I have a...
Oh, listen to this, it gets better.
Good.
So while Adams is sending out flyers not to come here, there's groups out there putting out flyers, come to New York, they have to take care of you.
So there's propaganda on both sides. I have a weird theory. With how many migrants do you think in the last 3 years have came into this country, into the country, let alone New York City, but the country? What would you round it off to at this
Millions.
point? Millions, right?
Millions.
You know, I have a theory that we might be living, and this is pretty intense, guys. we might be living in the transatlantic slave trade of our time, where they're using this time propaganda to get people out of rich soiled countries, South America, or even in other places, and getting them and herding them into America. And that's pretty concerning, guys, because, you know, something must be said on the other side, and we should look into that, brother. What is being said on the other side that these people are looking for refuge here? And knowing that our government doesn't have the resources to actually help them, there's obviously an agenda, no?
There's definitely an agenda. People are telling these guys you can go to New York and by law they have to give everything you want. This is what's being told to them, right? The end game, I personally don't know the end game.
Right.
And I've asked multiple city officials, and I've asked people who work in hotels, and I asked cops, and I'm asking really important people that should know and they don't know. There is an agenda. I just don't see it yet. Some Republicans are saying now it's for voting, right? Which is actually an interesting theory, right? We have 100,000 migrants here. They're spread out through multiple districts throughout New York City, right? So New York City is ran by a city council. That city council controls that district. Say the district is from here in Queens all the way to Bushwick or whatever it is, right? They control that area. They're placed in different districts. Now, say they're able to vote. At this moment, they can't vote. Say they're able to vote, right, in a local elections. They can tip an election. That's the biggest voting.
100%.
That'll be the biggest voting block.
What were you saying the numbers were that actually come out regularly? What was it?
So there's about 3,000 showing up every week. 2,500, 3,000 showing up every week.
No, for the voting and how they would be able to tip it. So when people normally vote, what was the number that you were telling me?
So normally people come out, I don't know, 2,000 people come out to vote in the local elections per district.
So they can easily
tip.
Hand over fist.
This is that will be the most powerful voting bloc in the world.
And all they got to say is Trump is going to deport you, so you have to vote against Republicans, right?
Exactly. Or the Republicans can say, look, the Democrats are not treating you right. You have to vote. It can go in either way.
Right.
It's whoever got their first lit, that's who's going to get it.
Yeah, that's scary what they're doing to the people just on a humanitarian level. I wanted to ask you, because you are covering Staten Island. We're watching the news, and I know you deal with all these major outlets. We're watching the news paint the people that live in Staten Island as a bunch of racists. You being on the ground, boots on the ground, not picking a side, feeling for both parties, are these people in fact racist?
Absolutely not. Look, they're not all racist. I'm sure there's some racists, like there's some racists on Black Lives Matter side, like there's some racists on the Spanish side, like there's some racists on the Jewish side. We have a little bit of racism, everything, but you don't paint the whole Staten Island as racism, right? Like I said, there's good and bad on all sides, right? But Staten Island as a whole is not racist, but they want to paint them as racist. See, the thing with Staten Island is they're not against migrants. They're against migrants putting them in residential areas. And that's what the news is missing. The news is not adding where they're against just hundreds and thousands of migrants being housed in a multi-million-dollar area, right? I've seen certain areas where they house thousands of migrants, and it looks totally different than what it started. Right? Imagine living in a multi-million-dollar house, and all of a sudden you have people hanging out everywhere, right? You have hundreds of scooters everywhere. There is a problem with shoplifting with the migrants, right? There is a problem with other stuff that's going on with the migrants. Would I want that by my multi-million-dollar home? Probably not. They have a right to be angry. I would be angry too.
Is it true that if they would have been housed there, at this point, are they being housed there?
Right now, there's a few, yeah.
They are, okay. And in 60 days, is it true that they will have to leave that facility and be on the street?
Absolutely. So Mayor Adams brought in this 60-day notice where they have to leave the facility in 60 days. They'll have to.
So that seems like a recipe for disaster.
We're going to see a massive homeless crisis come out. They're already leaving. So what's going on now is some of the couples with no kids are being moved from these 5-star hotels into these HERC facilities. HERC facilities are these places where they have hundreds of cots, right, and they live there. Some of the migrants are getting there, and it says, no, we don't want to live there. They got spoiled.
Right.
And you know what? It's the city's fault. They spoiled them, right? They gave them these 5-star hotel rooms, multi-million-dollar hotels.
Tapered them to a cot.
And now they're taking to a cot. And they're like, no, we don't want it. And they're going back to these facilities, these processing centers, and they're trying to get reprocessed, thinking they're going to get another hotel room. Reality is they get sent back to a HERC facility. They're not getting any more hotel rooms. Forget about it. And Adams put the 60-day rule in. And after 60 days, they have to leave the facility.
Now, all right, so it's almost like musical chairs, right? How are 100,000 people, let's say, what do you think randomly are in these shelters at this point? I know these are, guys, these are very gray numbers we're dealing with here, but how many shelters are there and how many men are, there's like 300 in each facility, something like that, right?
Some have thousands. So at the moment,
have thousands.
Yes. So at the moment, we have 110,000 migrants in New York. I believe about 60 to 70,000 of them is still in the care of New York City, which means they're either in a HERC facility or they're in a hotel. City officials state that we have more migrants in our care than we do New Yorkers.
So we're looking at like I was saying, a musical chair situation where we're not even going to have the resources. So if you have a 60-day rule, it almost guarantees that they will be on the street. Even a regular New Yorker, if you give them 60 days to just get out of wherever they're getting, and let alone someone that doesn't probably speak the language, doesn't know where the work is, doesn't know where things are, how do you conform in 60 days, brother?
You can't. You can't. What the city's doing is telling them, look, we have no more room. They'll have to get reprocessed, go through the system again, and possibly get another HERC facility, right, which is COTS. Or the city will buy you a ticket and say, sayonara. Go back home. The city's going bankrupt.
So there's an option to go back if someone wants to go back?
Absolutely. Go back or get shipped to a different state. On the house.
Scary. And who's paying for this,
Us,
Leeroy?
me and you, our taxpayers.
We the people?
We the people.
We the
people paying the ticket.
Coming out, we the pockets.
We the pockets. And it's funny, you say that, but that's going to happen. We are going to get it. We're going to have certain city agencies get money taken away from them just because of the migrant crisis. Right? So say you have kids and they're going to a library. You're going to have some of those services cut because of the migrants. Say transit is going to get cut. All these facilities, all these agencies will get cut. And it's a fact. They will get cut to house migrants.
Last question, and this is a tough one because I know you don't play any sides. If it finds out at any time that the Democratic Party and this administration did this for votes, and it ends up, could this be an act of treason?
If they did this exactly for votes, yeah, it's election tampering. No one should be doing it. No one should be playing with people's lives for election tampering.
Republican or
it doesn't matter, Republican or Democrat. No one should be playing with someone's lives, especially these kind of people. These guys traveled thousands and thousands of miles. Some of their kids were raped on the way here, right? People were murdered on their way here. Their family members are being killed back in wherever they come from because some of them still owe bills, right? It costs money to come over. You got to pay the cartel money, right? If you don't pay that debt, they're going to kill your family.
Scary, bro. Leeroy, I want to thank you for coming, and I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing in the city. I know you personally, and we speak all the time, and you do this for principle and not payment. You take the time out. You really care about people, and you really play that fine line where you don't pick a side. So I just want to thank you for everything you're doing for New York City, brother.
Thank you, Greg.
And thank you for coming.
Thank you.
You want to blow up some fireworks?
Yeah, let's blow some fire.
Let's go do it.
Let's have some fun.
And we're out.